Hi, welcome to Refugee Part 7. I'm reading this with permission from Scholastic Books, and here we go. So, Yosef, let's see. What happened last time when we read about Yosef? So Yosef got to go down, see the engine room, and he got to, have a tour of the ship. And what happened was all the kids were getting a tour of the ship went past where the staff was hanging out, and there was a ton of Nazis on the staff, and they were, super mean. And that was scary, and that was disappointing because it felt like things were safe on the ship, and now Yosef realizes that they aren't. So, somewhere on the Atlantic Ocean in 1939, 11 days from home, Yosef's mother grabbed for his father's flailing arms, but Aaron Landau was too strong for her, thin as he was. No, they're coming for us, he said, his eyes frantic. The ship is slowing down. Can't you feel it? We're slowing so they can turn us around and take us back to Germany. Yosef's father pulled his arm away and knocked over a lamp. It fell to the floor with a crash, and the light went out. Yosef, help me, his mother begged. Yosef pulled himself away from the wall and tried to grab one of his father's arms while his mother went for the other. In the corner of her bed, Ruthie buried her face in Bitsy's ears and cried. No, Yosef's father cried. We have to hide. Do you hear me? We can't stay here. We have to get off the ship. Yosef grabbed his father's arm and held on tight. No, Papa, we're not turning around, Yosef said. We're slowing for a funeral at sea. Yosef's father stopped dead, but Yosef kept a tight hold on him. He hadn't wanted to tell his father about the funeral, but now it seemed the only way to calm him down. Aaron Landau's bulging, haunted eyes swept to his son. A funeral? Who died? A passenger? It was the Nazis, wasn't it, who did it? I knew they were on board. They're after us all. He began to thrash again, more panicked than before. No, Papa, no, Yosef said. He fought to hold on to his father. He was an old man, Professor Willer. He was sick when he came aboard. It's not the Nazis, Papa. Yosef knew all about it. Ruthie had begged him to go swimming in the pool with her and Renata and Evelyn that afternoon. But Yosef was a man now, not a boy. He was too old for kid stuff. He'd been walking in the outside boardwalk on B deck instead, keeping an eye out for the man from the engine room, Schneidick, and his friends, when he'd heard a cry from one of the cabin portholes. Peeking inside, he saw a woman with long, curly black hair and a white dress sobbing as she lay across the body of an old man. Captain Schroeder and the ship's doctor were there too. The man in the bed was perfectly still, his mouth open and his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. He was dead. Yosef had never seen a dead body so close up before. You there, boy! Yosef had jumped. A woman walking her little dog on the boardwalk on B deck caught him peeping. He sprinted away as the little dog barked at him, but not before Yosef heard the ship's doctor say that Professor Weller had died of cancer. In his family's cabin a few hours later, Yosef still clung to his father's arm, trying to calm him down. He was an old man, and he'd been sick for a long time already. Yosef told his father, they're burying him at sea because we're too far away from Cuba. Yosef and his mother hung on to his father until Yosef's words finally got through. Papa stopped struggling against them and sagged. Suddenly they were holding him up off the floor. He was sick already? Papa asked. Yes, it was the cancer, Yosef said. Yosef's father let them guide him to his bed, where he sat down. Mama went to Ruthie to comfort her. When is the funeral? Papa asked. Late tonight, Yosef said. I want to go, replied his father. Yosef couldn't believe it. Papa hadn't left the cabin in 11 days, and now he wanted to go to the funeral of someone he'd never met. In his condition, Yosef looked worriedly to his mother, who held Ruthie in her lap. I don't think that's such a good idea, Mama said, echoing Yosef's thoughts. I saw too many men die without funerals at Dachau, Papa said. That's the concentration camp he was at. I will go to this one. It's the first time his father had even spoken the name of the place he'd been, and it was like a winter frost covered everything in the room. It ended the conversation as quickly as it began. Take Yosef with you then, Mama said. Ruthie and I will stay here. That night, Yosef led his father to A-deck aft, where the captain and his first officer waited with a few other passengers. The passengers' clothes looked shabby, and it was only when he heard his father tearing his shirt that Yosef understood. Ripping your garments was a Jewish tradition at funerals, and they had torn theirs in sympathy with Mrs. Weller. Yosef pulled on his own collar until the seam ripped. His father nodded, then led him to the sandbox by the pool and had him take a handful of sand. Yosef didn't understand, but he did as he was told. The elevator to A-deck arrived, and Mrs. Weller emerged first, a candle in hand. Behind her came the rabbi and 4 sailors, who carried Professor Weller's body on a stretcher. He was bound up tight in a white sailcloth like an Egyptian pharaoh. Hold on there, the man from below decks, Schneidick, pushed through the small crowd with two fellow crew members. I'm Otto Schneidig, the Nazi Party leader on this ship, he said, and German law says that a body buried at sea must be covered with the national flag. Schneidig unfurled the red and white Nazi flag with the black swastika in the middle, and the passengers gasped. Papa pushed his way forward. Never. Do you hear me? Never. It's a sacrilege. He was shaking worse than ever. Yusuf had never seen his father this angry, and he was frightened for him. Schneidig wasn't the kind of man you wanted to mess with. Yusuf grabbed his father's arm and tried to pull him away. Papa spat at the feet of Schneidig. That is what I think of you and your flag. Schneidig and his men surged forward to avenge the insult, but Captain Schroeder quickly intervened. Stop this at once, steward, Captain Schroeder commanded. Schneidig addressed the captain, but never took his eyes off Yusuf's father. It's German law, and I see no reason for an exception to be made in this case. And I do, Captain Schroeder said. Now, take that flag and leave here, Mr. Schneidig, or I will relieve you of duty and have you confined to your quarters. The steward held Papa's gaze for one long moment more. His eyes shifted to Yusuf, giving him goosebumps, and then Schneidig turned and stormed away. Yusuf's chest heaved like he'd been running a marathon. He was so wound up, he was quivering worse than his father. Sand slipped from his shaking fist. The captain apologized profusely for the disturbance, and the funeral continued. The rabbi said a short prayer in Hebrew, and the sailors slid the body of Professor Weller over the side of the ship. After a moment, there was a quiet splash, and the mourners said together, "Remember, God, that we are of dust." One by one, they stepped to the rail, where they released handfuls of sand, the sand Yosef's father had told him to take from the sandbox. Yosef joined his father at the rail, and they scattered their sand in the sea. Captain Schroeder and his first officer put their caps back on and saluted. They touched the brims of their hats, Yosef noticed, instead of giving the Hitler salute. Without words, the funeral service broke up. Yosef expected his father to return to their cabin right away, but instead he lingered at the rail, staring down in the dark waters of the Atlantic. What is he thinking? Yosef wondered. What happened to him at Dhaka that he's now a ghost of the man he once was? At least he didn't have to be buried in the hell of the Third Reich, his father said. The ship rumbled softly, and Yosef knew the captain had to restart the engines. They were on their way to Cuba again. How much time had they lost? And remember, they had to get to Cuba before the other ships, or else Cuba might not have enough space for all the Jews who are trying to emigrate there. Now we're on to Isabel. In the Straits of Florida, somewhere north of Cuba in 1994. She's one day from home. So what happened last time with Isabel is that we found out that she has a great uncle who's in America. She didn't know she had any family there, and they were kind of talking about what their lives could be like in America. And then her chapter left off with a huge tanker ship heading straight towards their little tiny boat. The tanker emerged from the darkness like some giant leviathan, which is an underwater monster, come to swallow them. It stood at least 7 stories tall out of the water and was so wide it filled the horizon. Its pointed bow sent huge waves sluicing away, and 2 massive anchors stood out from the sides like the horns of a monster. Isabel quailed in fear. It was a sight straight out of a nightmare. A ship, Lito yelled. We're drifting into the shipping lanes. We've drifted into the shipping lanes. But by now, everyone had seen it. The rumble of the ship's massive engines, had wakened Mommy and Senora Castillo, and everyone was scrambling around in the boat in panic, making it rock dangerously. It's coming right for us, Amara screamed. Isabel climbed over Ivan, trying to get as far away from the tanker as she could. She slipped and fell with a splash into the bottom of the boat. Everybody settle down, Senor Castillo cried, but no one was listening. We have to get the engine started, Poppy cried. He yanked frantically on the starter chain, barely giving the engine enough time to cough and die before he yanked on it again. Don't, you'll flood it and it'll never start, Louise said, trying to wrestle the chain from him. Where are the machetes? Lito cried. We have to start a fire. The matches, sorry. The machetes are a little more violent. Where are the matches? Lito cried. We have to start a fire. They can't see us in the dark. Here, said Ivan. He lifted a matchbox from the styrofoam carton that held the few emergency supplies they brought. No, Poppy yelled. He lunged for Ivan's outstretched hand, and together they fell against the side of the boat, tipping it. Isabel's mother fell into a pool of water on the bottom and slid into the side of the boat with a thump. Isabel crawled to help her. Lito grabbed Poppy by the shirt. What are you doing? He demanded. Poppy held the matchbox out of Lito's reach. We don't want to be seen, you old fool, he yelled over the growing thunder of the tanker. If they see us, they'll have to rescue us. It's maritime law, and if they rescue us, they'll send us back to Cuba. Would you rather they send us to the ocean floor? Lito yelled. Isabel couldn't help looking up as she pulled her mother out of the water. It's getting closer, Isabel cried. The tanker was still hundreds of meters away, but it was so huge it felt like it was on top of them. They were never getting out of its way. Isabel's heart thumped so hard as she thought it was going to burst right out of her chest. We don't want them to know we're here. Maybe we shouldn't start the engine, Amara yelled. They'll never hear us no matter what we do, Senor Castillo said. The tanker was so loud now it sounded like a jet engine. He and Luis flipped a switch on their own engine and yanked the starter chain again. A puff of gray smoke poofed out of the engine, but it didn't catch. The tanker loomed larger, closer. Isabel cringed. It was going to hit them. Luis yanked the chain. A cough, a sputter, nothing. Cough, sputter, nothing. Cough, sputter, nothing. The sea swelled in front of the tanker, pushing them higher and away. For a fleeting moment, Isabel's hopes rose with it. But then the swell passed, and they were pulled back in by the tanker's massive drop. Their little blue boat spun sideways, and they zoomed toward the ship's big prow. The tanker was going to tear them in half, right down the middle. Isabel looked up into the terrified eyes of Ivan as he realized the same thing, and they screamed. Then suddenly they were both thrown to the bottom of the boat, and something buzzed like a mosquito under the howl of the tanker. Luis had gotten the engine to start. The little boat shot forward in the water, darting out of the way of the tanker's prow. The waves thrown off by the big ship lifted the back end of Isabel's boat and dumped an ocean of seawater on top of them. Isabel swallowed a mouthful of salty water and tumbled across the boat. She slammed into something hard, and her shoulder exploded with pain. She came up spluttering. She was hip deep in water, and the engine had stopped again, but none of that mattered right now. Ivan's father had fallen overboard. Isabel saw his white-haired head rise out of the water. Senor Castillo gulped for air and then disappeared as a wave from the massive tanker's wake rolled over him. Senor Castillo! Isabel cried. Papa, Ivan shouted. Where is he? Do you see him? Isabel and Ivan frantically searched the dark waters, watching for Senor Castillo to surface again. They had missed the ship's huge prow by mere meters. The waves of the behemoth, that's another word for a big monster, created as it passed were just as dangerous. The ocean heaved and sank, the little boat tipping over sideways as the wave caught it amidships. Everyone was just getting back up from the floor of the boat when they were sent tumbling again. Ivan rolled to the other side of the boat, but Isabel hung on. There! She saw Senor Castillo's head pop up from under the water, but only for a gasping second, too quick to get enough air. In a flash, Isabel remembered her grandmother disappearing under the waves just like that 2 years ago, and without another thought, Isabel dove in after Senor Castillo. Hi. Now we're on to Mahmoud in Izmir, Turkey, 2015, 11 days from home. So they were supposed to get a boat to take them to Greece, but they were told to get there on a certain day, and they hurried and got there, and then the guy said that they were leaving the next day, so they needed a place to stay. So they paid a ton of money to stay in this old abandoned mall in the yogurt shop, where apparently lots of other people, refugees, are camping out, and it looks like maybe they won't be able to leave so soon. Mahmoud screamed. He howled louder than a fighter jet, and his parents didn't even tell him to hush. Lights came on in all the houses nearby, and curtains ruffled as people looked out at the noise. Mahmoud's mother broke down in tears, and his father let the life jackets he carried drop to the ground. The smuggler had just told them their boat wasn't leaving tonight. Again. No boat today. Tomorrow, he told Mahmoud's father. It's exactly the same thing he told Mahmoud's father the day before, and the day before that, and every day for the last week. A text would come telling them to hurry, out to the beach, and every time they would pack up a few things they owned, grab the life jackets, and rush through the streets of Izmir to this parking lot. Every time, there would be no boat waiting for them. First it was the weather, the smuggler said. Then another family was supposed to go with them, and they hadn't arrived yet. Then it was the Turkish Coast Guard patrols, or the boat wasn't ready. It was always some reason that they couldn't leave. It's like some cruel schoolyard game of keep away. Mahmoud and his family were at their wits' end. This off and on again business was tearing them apart. All except for Walid, lifeless Walid, who didn't flinch even when bombs exploded. I want to go back to Syria. I don't care if we die, Mahmoud said after he let out a scream. I just want to get out of here. Even as he said it, he heard the whine in his voice, the pathetic, toddler-like frustration. Part of him was embarrassed. He was older than that, more mature. He was almost a man. But another part of him just wanted to stomp his feet and pitch a fit. And that part of him was getting harder and harder to keep quiet. Little Hannah started crying too when Mahmoud's mother tried to calm them both by pulling Mahmoud into a hug. Look at it this way, Dad said. Now we have more time to practice our Turkish. No one laughed. Let's get back to the mall before someone takes our place, Mom said wearily. Mahmoud carried the life jacket so his father could carry Walid, who quickly fell asleep on his father's shoulder. His mother carried Hannah. Even though Mahmoud hated the desperate feeling of defeat and going back to the mall, at least it meant not sleeping outside in the park. By this time, someone was waiting for them at the mall entrance. There were two of them, both Turkish men in matching blue tracksuits. One of them was muscular with curly black hair, a thin beard, and a thin thick gold chain necklace. The other was overweight, wore mirrored sunglasses, even though there was no sun in sight. Even though it was night. He was the one with the pistol stuck in the waist of his pants. You want inside, you got to pay rent, the burly man told them. Since when? Mahmoud's father said. Since now, the man said. We own this building. We're tired of you Syrians freeloading. More bullies, thought Mahmoud. Just like in Syria. Mahmoud's legs went numb and he thought he might fall over. He couldn't bear the thought of walking any further and looking for a place to live again. How much? Mahmoud's father asked wearily. 5,000 pounds a night, the muscular man said. Dad sighed and started to put Waleed down so he could pay the man. Each, said the man. Each? Per night? Dad said. Mahmoud knew his dad was doing the math in his head. There were 5 of them. They'd already been there a week. How long could they afford to pay 25,000 pounds a day and still have enough for the boat and whatever came afterwards? No, Mahmoud's father said. Mom started to protest, but he shook his head. No, we already have all our things. We'll find someplace else to stay. It's only till tomorrow. The big man chuckled. Right, tomorrow. Mahmoud staggered along behind his parents as they roamed the streets of Izmir looking for some place to sleep. His parents carried Waleed and Hannah, but not him. He was too old to be carried anymore, and for the first time, he wished he wasn't. They finally found the doorway of a travel agency set back from the street, and no one else was sleeping there. They were just settling in when a Turkish police car came down the street. Mahmoud shrank back into the corner, trying to be invisible, but the police car's lights came on and beeped its electronic siren at them. Bloop, bloop. You can't sleep here, the police officer told them through a loudspeaker, so they had to get up and start walking again. Mahmoud was so tired he started to cry, but he did it softly so his parents wouldn't hear. He hadn't cried like this since that first night when the bombs had started to fall on Aleppo. Another car came down the road, and at first Mahmoud worried it was another police car, but it was a BMW sedan. On a whim, Mahmoud darted out into the car's headlights and waved the life jackets on his arms. Mahmoud, no! His mother cried. The BMW slowed, and its lights bright on his face. The driver honked at him, and Mahmoud hurried around to the driver's side window. Please, can you help us? Mahmoud begged. My baby sister. But the car was already shooting away. Another car followed it and drove right past Mahmoud. Mahmoud, get out of the street, his father called. You'll get yourself killed. Mahmoud didn't care anymore. There had to be someone who would help them. He waved the life jackets at the next car, and miraculously it stopped. It was an old brown Skoda, and the driver rolled down the window by hand. He was an elderly, wrinkled man with a short white beard, and he wore a black and white keffiyeh headscarf. I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. Please, can you help us? Mahmoud asked. My family and I have nowhere to go, and my sister's only a baby. Dad jogged up and tried to pull Mahmoud away. We're very sorry, Mahmoud's father told the man. We didn't mean to bother you. We'll be on our way. Mahmoud was annoyed. He'd finally gotten somebody to stop, and now his father was trying to send them away. My house is too small for all of you, the man said, but I have a little car dealership, and you can stay in the office. Stay in the office. He was speaking Arabic. Mahmoud was thrilled. It was fluent Arabic. No, we couldn't possibly, Mahmoud's father started to say, but Mahmoud cut him off. Yes, thank you, Mahmoud cried. He waved over to his mother. He speaks Arabic, and he says he will help us. Dad tried to apologize again and refused the offer of help, but Mahmoud was already climbing in the back seat with a load of life jackets. Mom got in beside him with Hannah, and Mahmoud's father shifted Waleed in his arms so he could reluctantly sit in the front passenger seat. Mahmoud, his father said unhappily, but Mahmoud didn't care. They were off their feet, and they were on their way to someplace they could sleep. The little Skoda's gears ground as the man got them underway. My name is Sami Nasir, the man told them, and Mahmoud's father introduced them all. You are Syrian, yes? Refugees? The man asked. I know what that's like. I am a refugee, too, from Palestine. Mahmoud frowned. This man was a refugee, and he owned his own car and his own business? How long have you lived in Turkey? Mahmoud asked Mr. Nasir. 70 years now, Mr. Nasir said, smiling at Mahmoud in the rearview mirror. I was forced to leave my home in 1948 during the first Arab-Israeli war. They were still fighting there, but someday, when my homeland is restored, I will go home again. Dad's phone chimed, surprising them all and making Waleed stir. His father read the glowing screen. It's the smuggler. He says the boat will be ready tomorrow. Mahmoud had learned not to get excited about these texts, but even so, he still felt a little flutter of hope in his chest. You take a boat to Greece tonight? Mr. Nasir asked. Maybe, Mahmoud's father said, if it's there. I will take you to it, and if it is not there, you can come back and stay with me. You're very kind, Mom said. Mahmoud didn't know why, but his mother pulled Mahmoud close and gave him a hug. It took very little time for the car to take them back to the beach, and when they pulled to a stop, they were all quiet as they stared. This time, finally, a boat was there. End of part 7.